Hi there. Welcome to episode number 6 of Little Big Knits. My name is Selma. I'm your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Selma Knits. I'm coming to you from Ottawa here in Canada, where the weather is absolutely stunning for the middle of September. It's the 16th of September today, and we have about 28 degrees Celsius. It is hot and sunny. Which is quite something. And actually, it makes me think, I got married 10 years ago this month to my husband on the 26th of September, and we had a day pretty much like today. It was about 30 degrees, really hot and sunny. So September is turning out to be the same as it was 10 years ago. And yeah, we're going to be celebrating our anniversary next year. We did things a little in the backwards kind of way because we had our kids first and then got married, got engaged, had kids, and then got married. So anyway, that's the way it happened for us. So anyway, getting into some heavy topics already. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you if you're new for checking me out. And thank you for coming back. If you are a returning viewer, thank you for joining me. So I've got quite a bit of stuff for you guys here today. I'm not feeling fabulous. I'm just gonna put that out there. I seem to have gotten a cold of some sort. I stayed home yesterday. My voice may be a little funny. I've actually got a big glass of water and a cup of tea today because I think I might need some extra reinforcement. And hopefully I'm not too much of a space cadet. But I stayed home yesterday. My son has very bad allergies that always hit him at the beginning of September. He's got ragweed allergies. So he always starts the school year feeling a bit depleted and all stuffy and all that stuff. And this year he also ended up getting a cold, which he then gave to me. So anyway, that's where it's coming from. So I may not be completely with it today. We'll see what happens. If this is a complete disaster, it might not end up on the interwebs. We'll see. So anyway, today I'm going to share with you one finished object that I have, the poncho, and an almost finished object, like it's like this far from being a finished object, and a couple of other new cast-ons. As well, I've got a couple of acquisitions. I'm going to talk to you about the CAL that seems to be the result of this little survey, and I'm also going to draw a prize or announce a giveaway, I should say, actually, because we have reached 1,000. Actually, we've reached over 1,000 subscribers already. So I thought, well, I better celebrate that in some way. So we'll talk about that. There have been a couple of questions in the Ask Away thread in our Ravelry group. So yeah, we've got a Ravelry group. Please come over and join in. And there is an Ask Away thread. So if you have any questions, I'll either answer them there or on the actual podcast, depending on the nature of the question. So feel free to ask anything in the Ask Away thread. And so I'll answer a couple of those questions. And I think that's about it. I can already tell that I'm all over the place. But anyway, hopefully we'll all survive. So I also wanted to thank you guys because last time I asked you if you have used ChowGoo or Haya interchangeables, if you had an opinion, because after getting the Lütke needles, I've been thinking about getting some metal ones. And I had never really heard much about the ChowGoo needles. I've heard lots of positive things about Hayas. And so thanks so much for those of you who gave your impressions of the needles that you've used. Very positive comments again about Hayas, and also very positive comments about ChowGoos. So I'm getting the impression that I can't really go wrong with either of the sets. So I may just invest. Acme Fibers, where I bought my Lütke needles, are still having a sale, by the way, if I can enable you a little bit. And they have ChowGoo needles. So I don't know if they have Hayas. I didn't actually pay attention to that. They have the Lykke, they have the Chaogus, and they have something else. So anyway, if you're interested, check them out. So I might just dive in soon. We'll see. But I've really been enjoying my Lykke needles. And you know, they're really easy to work with, and they've been good. The joins are really smooth, although I have had a hard time sometimes actually getting the darn things onto the cables, the needles. And I thought, well, that's probably just because they're new and I use the key and everything. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the interchangeables. It's a very, very handy thing to have. So thank you so much for all your input on that. Another thing I also wanted to mention from last time, I showed you guys this button that I had gotten, and I actually named my episode after it, and it says Yarned and Dangerous. I didn't realize that Brenda, who gave these buttons to us, actually has an Etsy shop. So if you're interested in looking at her buttons, she's got lots of knitting buttons as well as other sort of kitschy and fun things. Her Etsy shop is called Flair Game, and I'll write that down in the down bar. It's F-L-A-I-R Game, and she's on Etsy. So if you're interested in any of those, go and check her out. So I'm going to start with the giveaway because it's there on my list and I don't want to end up forgetting it. But as I said, we have reached 1,100 viewers about at this point. So thank you so much for subscribing. I hope you're here every time I podcast. It'd be lovely to have you. I wish I could see you guys. But I'm really enjoying podcasting, and I'm really enjoying the feedback, of course. Who doesn't like good feedback? But conversations that are had along the way. It's really great fun. So if you want to subscribe, just hit the subscribe button down there, and you'll get notifications then when I do post. So my dear friend Sue, who is Crafty Knitter 7 on Ravelry and Instagram, and who is the idea behind the Two Tangle Skeins podcast. She's the original of the Two Tangle Skeins podcast, and who I was podcasting with. She wanted to be able to provide the first giveaway for this podcast. So I am happy to announce that she has made a wonderful bag. I just want to show this to you. This is fabric that I actually had, and I said, could you make something with this fabric? Because I just love this fabric. So it's this beautiful greens and grays, which are colors that I just love, with a bright green sort of watercolor type paper on the inside, and it's got snaps, it's got stiff stiff interfacing, and so you can actually have your project in here. It's a kind of a one skein project. It's sort of like a perfect sock bag, so you can have it open like that and just knitting from it. It's a great bag. I have one myself, which I have a project in. I'll show it to you later. So this is up for the giveaway, as well as a, what do you call these things? You know what it is. You put your DPNs in here, and she's double snapped it so that you can actually put circulars in here as well. So you have that, as well as some stitch markers. So she has made wonderful, I love Sue's stitch markers, by the way. They are the stitch markers that I definitely use the most. They are these simple kinds of stitch markers, and I can tell my brain is not going to find words today. So I hope you're okay to fill in the blanks for me. But they're snagless stitch markers, and they're really fabulous. And she also made this progress keeper, which was with a bead from a necklace that I gave her. I had this old necklace, and I was like, you know what? This has lots of fun beads on it. You might want to take it apart, and she did. And so she's making progress keepers with the beads from it. So these three things are going to be the prize. And if you're interested in this lovely bag, I think what we're going to do, because YouTube is, it's a bit of a funny place, if it can be called a place, in that I can't pick from the subscribers list and guarantee that I'm going to get everybody, because if you don't have a public account, I can't see that you've subscribed to me. So out of the 1,100 subscribers, I can't see everybody that has subscribed. So I'm going to ask you to just make a comment in the down bar. I know that not everybody is on Ravelry, so I don't want to exclude anybody. I'd like to include as many people as possible who would like to be in the giveaway. So basically, put a comment down below. You can say whatever you like. If you can't think of what you'd like to say, you could tell me about something that you are working on or something that you are planning to work on, whether it is knitting, crochet, weaving, spinning, whatever, something of that nature. Or you can just make another kind of comment down below, that's fine. And please only make one comment. I will not be responding to people. I try really hard to respond to people because I do want that conversation, but because it'll be very difficult for me to figure out how many entries there are if I respond, I'm going to refrain from responding or replying. I might give you a little heart or a thumbs up this time around, and just count every entry in there as every comment as an entry. Okay, so if you don't want to enter the giveaway and you do want to make a comment, then you might have to go to the Ravelry group, and then I will randomly draw from that, and I'll mention it on the next podcast. I won't be able to contact you because not everybody uses their email through YouTube, and it's a little bit complicated, so you're gonna have to watch next time to find out if you won the bag. Good luck. I hope you do. One of you anyway is going to win it. It's really, really lovely. I'm so pleased with it. So I'm just going to show you the bag again because it's just beautiful. Thank you, Sue. So that is the giveaway. So maybe we should get into some knitting. I'm sorry. I prefer podcasts where they just jump right into the knitting, and here I am 12 minutes in. And I'm just going to take a bit of a sip of my tea. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen that I finished the poncho for my daughter. And she has been wearing it. And I'm going to say that this was quite a success. So there it is. There's all the fringe that I did at the bottom. I will tell you that there was some cursing at the beginning of the fringe making, but I got used to it after a while, and I just kind of got into a rhythm. So this is a poncho that if you're just tuning in, this is a poncho that I kind of made up as I went along by looking at another poncho that my daughter had that was a hand-me-down from her aunt who wore it in the 70s, and it was crocheted. But I wanted to knit one for her because I'm just not good enough at crochet to fly by the seat of my pants like that. And my daughter really loved this yarn, which is by Katya, and it's the Spring Rainbow collection. And I ended up going into the second ball. So the first ball ended here, and then I started center pulling from the second ball so that it did that rather than going abruptly into the turquoise. And it worked out really, really well. In fact, so much so that I want one because I put it on one evening. I often get chilled in the evenings, and I put it on and I was like, a poncho is a really great thing to have. So maybe I'll make myself one. So you'll recall if you've watched before that I talked to, oh, and look at that, she's snagged it somewhere. I talked to you about starting it with a magic cast on here. It was 26 stitches per 4-inch. So I figured that to get it about the depth of the head, maybe a little bit beyond, I needed about 120 stitches. And then in total, I think it was 120 plus 3 for the I-cord for each side. And so there was an I-cord going down, which has rolled in. That's been a little bit of a disappointment. So I think if I repeat this, I will try something else on the edge rather than an I-cord, because that didn't do quite what I wanted it to do. Perhaps just a garter would have been okay, or I'll think about something else. And then I did some increases along the back up to about 152 stitches, and then I decreased, and I realized I needed to decrease quite quickly because I had gotten to the bottom of the hood. So I ended up decreasing around, but at first I was sort of decreasing in this kind of like, you know, increasing increase sections as I went along. Like I started with 2 and then I added 2 more in the middle. And it really did create a round head, and it's a nice roomy hood. It worked out really well. And then I went to a 1x1 rib for this part, and then I started doing the raglan, and I did the I-cord until I attached it down here, and then and I did a raglan increases here, one on each side of the divide, and I did increases along the top, increases along the top here, and then along the back and along the front. And probably my biggest lesson learned from this poncho was that when you do the increases along the shoulder, where you stop, you're going to end up like with a slight little bit of a poof. So you kind of like my sleeve is doing. So you really want to end your increases here so that it just naturally forms over your shoulder. And I ended up stopping my increases around here. So it's a little big for eyelash. I'm going to show you because I don't know that I can actually, I'll show you what I mean. And so I know now that if I'm going to make a poncho again, that these increases, I'm just going to stop them like just before the shoulder cap. And I think that then, maybe I just like looking like a goofball. Let's see if I can show this to you. It's kind of settled, but as you can see, it kind of goes out there, right? Can you believe it? I don't believe it. I was going to unplug the phone and I forgot. And it's ringing. I'm going to ignore it. It only rings 3 times. So that would be my biggest lesson for next time, is to really stop these increases here. You're not going to end up with a small poncho. Just continuing the increases in the front and the back, and it would be fine. And then you don't end up with this little thing here. Now, a kid is moving all the time. She's not remotely bothered by that, but I am slightly as the designer. And then I did just a sort of an I-cord hook there. And I happen to have this pink cloth button in my collection. I don't have a huge button collection, but that I thought, let's see, we're just going to find something from in there. And that was there. So that is, yeah, you can kind of see, I probably should have stopped the increases there. And you can see that it does this thing, right? So that's my biggest lesson. So if you're interested in making a poncho or coming up with one, that's that. I did have a couple of people ask me if I was going to write up the pattern. I don't think I really could at this point. I mean, I can give some guidelines, but I am thinking about maybe devising one again, and I think then, but probably with a bigger gauge. I think, I don't think I want to knit at 26 stitch gauge next time. I think I'd prefer it were a 21 or a 22, but we'll see. But if I do, I might. If you're really, really interested, get in touch and I'll see what I can do for guiding you along. But you know, it doesn't have to fit perfectly, not like a garment. So there's some flexibility there. But I have been thinking about making a poncho for myself. I often wear a shawl in the evenings, but it would be nice to have something that I just sling over. And I thought, even a scrappy poncho, you know, could be a fun thing to have. So anyway, we'll see where that goes, because there are so many plans and so many things to make. So that is my FO. The other one that is almost an FO, but not quite. I don't know. I think if you're a purist, you would be definitely telling me that it's not an FO. If you're a little bit, you know, more loosey-goosey on that, you might say, oh, that's an FO, but it's not an FO because you really couldn't wear it yet. But I told you last time that I was working on a test knit using some yarn that I had gotten at EYF. It's this really beautiful pure wool from Pirkkalanka, which is a Finnish yarn company. They don't tell you what kind of sheep they have. I thought about contacting them and asking them, just out of curiosity. It's, you know, it's a little bit on the rustic side. It's a little on the scratchy side. But they're color saturation is so beautiful. And when I was at EYF, I had a hard time choosing which color to buy because they were really quite beautiful. And I got them at a stand called Midwinter Yarns, which is a shop. I don't know if they have an actual shop, but they have an online presence. And I've been on. I was worried that I wouldn't have enough yarn for the sweater. I've had plenty. I probably could have actually made a slightly bigger size and I still would have had plenty. But I was on their site because I was worried that I wasn't going to have enough. And they have this yarn in stock. This is their denim colorway. And they have all their other ones too. And I have really, really enjoyed working with this yarn. So I'm going to keep that in mind for a future purchase. I also bought a Gotland yarn from them, which they also have on their website, which I have not knit with yet, but hope to in the near future. I bought it specifically to make a shawl, and it's a stunning yarn as well. Again, very rustic, and I'm also, I've been toying with that idea. And that one, I'm also a little worried that I might need an extra skein, so I know it's there if I need it. So with this yarn, I was doing a test knit for Marcia Ibuki. It was in my Buku bucket bag that I love so much. And I couldn't tell you what it was last time because she wanted to be able to talk about it on her podcast first. If you have watched Marcia, you will know that she has been designing a sweater. Sorry, I'm just fiddling here because the underarm had gone all funny. And I was going to make this for myself, and I actually cast it on and then realized this would be a fabulous sweater for Alejandro. She posted a picture of a version she made for her husband. It's a unisex sweater. And when I saw the version on her husband, I thought, that's really a sweater for Alejandro. So I ripped out what I'd knit. I'd knit a couple of inches beyond the ribbing, so not too much, and started over. And made him a different size, although in retrospect I realized I probably could have just made him my size because it's ended up slightly snug, but I haven't blocked it yet, so I think it's going to be just fine once it is. But it is a sweater, and here it is. Whoops, this is all. It's a bottom-up construction but seamless, and it's a very lovely design. Marcia will be releasing this in the middle of October. She's waiting for us to finish. And as you can see, I just have the underarms to Kitchener or to sew up and sew in the ends and block it. And this is ready. And it's a beautiful sweater with a basket weave centerpiece and just lovely, lovely, lovely. So this is Marcia's first foray into garment design, and she's done a lovely job. It's a wonderful, great construction. I have to say I like top down, but I also like bottom up seamless constructions. They can be a little bit, sometimes I'm wondering if I'm going too far or not far enough for the torso. So that's the one thing where you're knitting and you're not quite sure if you're going to need a tiny bit more length or a little bit less length. That's the only challenge I find with bottom up, but generally I have found those sweaters to all fit really nicely. So yeah, and it is unisex, so it's a wonderful pattern for a male or a female, and it was a joy to knit. It was a joy to knit with the yarn and as well as the pattern. So I couldn't quite get it finished for today. I knit on it so much, and then I was like, I just need to start something else. So I've started a couple other things, but I'm going to finish it this weekend, and then there'll be pictures up on my Ravelry page as well as on Instagram, and maybe I'll give you a little show next time. So that's one work in progress. The other thing, I started a pair of socks actually in the bag that Sue had made for me. So this is like the one that's in the giveaway, which is just a wonderful size. And I love the fact that there's not a lot of fuss up here, and it's in my purse. In fact, I almost forgot to take it out of my purse before I podcast because it's in there all the time. And in here is a pair of socks. And this was a gift from Sue. The yarn was a gift from Sue, and the pattern was a gift from Amy, who was a viewer. And it's funny because I made 17 pairs of socks last year. I didn't enter them into the box of socks, Cal, with Kristen of Yarngasm, primarily because 10 of them were for me, not 12, and 7 were for others. I think that's how it worked out. Anyway, I made a lot of socks as gifts last year. It's a great gift, and I have some knit-worthy friends who really, really appreciated them. So by the end of last year, my mojo was kind of depleted. I had made 1 pair of socks this year so far. But last weekend, was it? I was in need of a project with me, and the yarn and the needle and the pattern and the bag were already all together and assembled. And so I just grabbed it because what I was working on, none of it I could bring with me, and I didn't know if I was going to have time to knit. I certainly couldn't lug anything with me, so I just grabbed this out of my knitting closet, because what I have is a yarn closet, and started a pair of socks. So I am making a very simple but interesting pattern that Amy, who is a viewer, hello Amy, gifted me. It's called the Slip and Swirl. And I have to be honest, the picture tells you nothing about what the pattern's going to look like. The variegated yarn is probably not the best yarn for this pattern. You can see it far better on the second page, but you won't see it very well there at all. But it's, I think, a nice pattern for a striped yarn or for a solid yarn, or for maybe, if you're going to use a variegated yarn, something with very subtle variegation, I would say. So I didn't really know what this was going to look like when I started making it, and it's very subtle, and I have lost a couple of stitches. Ooh, and I just lost a couple more. Sorry. Okay, I'll fix that later. So I'm using, this is Felici yarn that Sue had gifted me, and it is in the 58893 colorway. I know it's got a name, but I don't know what it is, but somebody said that it was somehow a Doctor Who reference, or at least the beginnings were. And it's self-striping yarn that's just so fun. Their yarns are so fun. And I don't know if you can see, it's just very subtle. It's a slip stitch in a swirly kind of way. Very subtle, really beautiful. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm not knitting on these that often. I'm knitting on them on my Chow Goose. These are my favorite sock needles, I have to say. And I do it using the magic loop. I knit on them here and there, so I'm not expecting these to be ready very quickly, but I'm really enjoying that. It looks, I hope you guys can see that, because it's just a really neat look. So anyway, I'm really enjoying that. So that is another work in progress that I have. Maybe there'll be a half object next time. We'll see. And yesterday I stayed home yesterday because I just wasn't feeling well, and I rested in the morning, and then in the afternoon I had a little bit more energy, so I started casting on. I told you last time that I wanted to knit with, and I showed you some yarns that I'd gotten at Rhinebeck previous years that I wanted to knit, and I wanted to knit through as many yarns from Rhinebeck as possible before Rhinebeck. So I may not end up with a Rhinebeck sweater, but at least I'll have used up my yarns, which is really great because it's you know, now that I've started working with these yarns that I bought at Rhinebeck, I know how much I like them. I like them a lot. And now I'm thinking, ooh, maybe I have to stop at those stalls again. So I had told you that I was going to start the Authenticity Shawl. So I cast that on yesterday. And this is a yarn, a pattern by Soft Sweater, which is Sylvia McFadden. And sorry, it's essentially this. It's a worsted weight yarn. And I'm using this yarn that I got last year at Rhinebeck. I showed you last time from the Hudson Valley Fiber Company. and it's their Moodna base, which they say is kind of a DK, but it's working beautifully on this shawl, which is supposed to be worsted. And I am completely in love with this yarn. Knitting it, it's got such an interesting texture, I have to say, and I'm unfortunately not well enough. Did I actually do that? I just stopped in the middle of a row. I'm not well enough versed in fibers and the worsted versus woolen spun and all this stuff to really be able to tell you more than some cute little words about how squishy it is. But this has such an interesting texture. So first of all, this is a lace pattern, and I've started the lace, but you're not going to be able to see a whole lot. There's a little bit of it. And it's this sort of deep plum color. Hopefully you can see that. I feel like the lighting today is, oh, did it just show up? Did you actually see it? It's got, it almost feels like there's alpaca in it, but there isn't. It's a Romney, New York State Romney, so it's local to Rhinebeck essentially, and US fine wool. So it's a combination of American sheep varieties, and it's just got it's essentially a 2-ply yarn, a little bit like the Birkalanka as well. So there you go. I think you would call this a woolen spun because the fibers seem to be going in a variety of different directions. And it's light and airy, which I think is another indication that it's woolen spun, because if it's worsted, it's a little bit more sleek and it's got a little bit more heaviness or drapiness to it. But I'm really, really enjoying it. It was such a fascinating, that was the thing when I started working with this right away. I was like, wow, this yarn, just a very different experience. There's a sponginess to it, or springiness, but in a different kind of way from other yarns that I've worked with that were kind of like that too. Really, really enjoyed it. I'm so looking forward to this. And thank you again to Michelle for the pattern. And I think it's just going to be just a wonderful, thick and warm fall shawl. And I'm knitting it on 5.5 needles. Oh, that's something I wanted to talk to you about, is needles. These are just, I'm not sure what needles these are. I think these are the Inox needles, the ones with the blue cables. I just wanted to get it started. So, and for a few days I could not find my Le Cassette. I found them, but I had already started that. So I didn't tell you about knitting on the sweater test. I've used every needle. I used the Lykke. I used some Chaugus, and I used what I believe are Hayahayas. So it was a very interesting experience because I used all the 3 needles that I've kind of been talking about. And I have to say, Hayahayas and Chaugus, I think they're both fabulous. They're slightly different. The cable on the Chaugus are a little bit stiffer than the cable on the Hayahayas. The needle of the Hayahayas feels almost hollow. This has a slight bit more weight, so this is a slightly lighter needle. They both have wonderful sharp tips. Is that focused? In fact, I would say the Hayahaya has a slightly longer and not the Hayahaya, the Chaugu has a slightly longer, slightly sharper tip in this variety, but I don't know what variety this is. So anyway, that was fun. I thought, I am trying out all the needles that I've been talking about. And they were great fun. And they all worked out beautifully. All right, and then last night, I felt like I needed something simple to knit on, and the shawl, I haven't memorized the lace pattern on it yet. I started watching Shetland, which is a series on Netflix. It takes place in Scotland, and they speak with Scottish accents, and they're wearing lots of woolies. And it's a detective show. Really nice. Certainly the first 2 episodes were great. but I just wanted something simple. So I thought, well, I'm going to cast on the other project that I spoke to you guys about last time, which was the Camden Hills. Well, they call it a poncho. I think it's more of a tunic. So I had shown you yarn that I got the first year that I was at Rhinebeck last time. I showed you last time the yarn that I'd gotten at Rhinebeck 2 years earlier, which is this 100% alpaca from Persimmon Farms, which has also been a delight. So I swatched with it, and then I actually cast it on. This poncho tunic is supposed to be made in worsted weight yarn. This is more of a, I'm going to say it's a sport weight or heavy fingering. And so I've really just done the ribbing. I'm starting at the bottom with the darker of the two grays, and I'm going to finish at the top with the lighter of the two grays. And that was a bit of a decision-making process, because I actually think I prefer this close to my face, but I didn't really want the lighter gray at the bottom, because I thought somebody was sort of suggesting there might be a little bit of color blocking if I wear dark pants, that it might be, you know, in terms of how I actually wear it, it might make more sense this way. So that's what I've decided to go with. And I'm just in the process of doing the garter section at the bottom of the front of the poncho. And that's all, as far as I've gotten. I'm completely off gauge, but this has an incredible amount of ease, this poncho. And so I'm making it, I'm still making the small size, which I would have made had I been making it with worsted weight yarn, but I have slightly less ease. But there's still, like, I think I'm about a 40 around the hips, maybe a 41, 40, something like that. And I think this is going to be about 47 around. So there's still a good 6 inches of ease, and I think that's going to be fine. So I hope to have this finished for Rhinebeck. And working with alpaca. Unfortunately, some people are allergic to alpaca. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to wear this if I'm hanging out with Lynn, because she's quite allergic to it. It really does have an amazing buttery quality about it. So anyway, I don't know if I'll be able to wear it to Rhinebeck, because I don't want to have somebody having a serious allergic reaction, and this is going to be a big alpaca item. But I certainly want to have it finished by then. We'll see. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. So I was knitting on this while watching Shetland, the first 2 episodes of it last night, and enjoying it. And it is in a bag that you've seen before by Lara of the Fawn and the Fox and her shop. So I don't know if there's much else to say about that, except that I have to say both yarns that I bought at Rhinebeck, I've really, really enjoyed working with. They've been just wonderful. And so those are all my whips. Last time I talked to you, I was saying how excited I was about Outlander, because Outlander was starting. And I was listening to the book, and I'm still listening to the book because it's a mammoth book. But at the same time, I'm a bit of a library addict. Pretty much every week I order a lot of stuff online, and I order a lot of knitting books, I order cookbooks, I order books for my kids, I order movies, books on tape for my mum, and this book arrived just in time for the Outlander series to be back on. And these are knits that are inspired by the series. And if you haven't watched it, and that was the one of the things that I loved about Outlander was the knits. So much wool in that show. And watching Shetland last night, there was so much wool as well. I was like, ooh, nice sweater. So there are all kinds of, if you've watched Outlander, you know that she wears this sort of capulette at one point in the first episode, first season, and there are lots of wonderful, rustic, simple projects, some a little bit less, like there's this sort of hooded scarf here that's got cables on it. But I have been enjoying looking at this and trying to figure out if and what I would make. There's a wonderful super bulky shrug. So if you have a chance, And if you're into Outlander, do get yourself a copy, because there's a lot of stuff. There's this one thing that I was thinking, which is this shawl, very simple garter stitch shawl that she often wears on the show, different colors, and I thought this would be fun to make. So anyway, it's right there, so I thought I'd share that with you. So I mentioned and asked you guys rather last time if you would be interested in a knit along. It could be a crochet along too, I think. Would you be more interested in a garment one or a shawl one? And pretty much everybody who mentioned interest was interested in a garment knit along. So Kate of Hawthorne Cottage Craft and I are going to be co-hosting a garment knit along. It's going to be called Garments Galore, the Garments Galore Cal, and that will be the hashtag to use on Instagram. And we are going to be starting this cal on the 1st of October, and it's going to go until the end of March. So it's essentially 6 full months. And so if you're already a garment knitter, please feel free to join in. Whips will be welcome. So if you are in the middle of knitting a sweater when the garment cal starts, you can enter it. If you've got a project that you started last year and you've run into a snag and you really want to finish it, this is the time to bring it out and fix that issue or get back on and start knitting it. If you've never knit a garment and really want to, this is your time to try. So whips are welcome. Double dipping is welcome in mine and Kate's, and of course if there's any other one. And this is for adult garments. So adult garments, anywhere from an extra small to extra large, whatever. And a garment is anything that is essentially covering your torso. So it could be a sweater, a cardigan, a vest, a tank, a tee. It could be a skirt. It could be a pair of shorts. It could be leggings, not leggings, but tights, or knitted pants, or a bathing suit. Anything that would be considered a garment that you would cover your body with, essentially. That's kind of a shrug would be fine, but not accessories. So not a hat or a shawl or mitts or socks or things like that. So it's really clothing. So that is going to be the cal. And there will be prizes at the end as well, and there will be 2 threads. So there'll be threads in my group as well as in Kate's group. We will have a chatter thread. So if you are in a quandary about or want to share about which yarns you want to choose or which size to make, you can come into the chatter thread. I'm happy to offer any experience I have around garment knitting. It's something that I very much enjoy. So you can come into the chatter thread, and then when you have finished your garment, you can post it in the FO thread. We will also have, we have yet to define a little bit, but we'll also have 2 other categories. One about it being your first sweater. So if you've never made a sweater, and you actually make one this time, you can enter it twice. And then there'll be another category in Kate's group, but I'll let her announce that because we still have a couple of little details to figure out. I'm just realizing I'm not quite sure what we decided on there. So yeah, so get your garments ready for, get your needles and your yarn ready and join us on this cal. So you've got 6 months. You can knit 1 sweater in that time, or 6, or however many. If you are a speedy, what did I call Holly the other day? Because she's knit 3 sweaters very back to back, and I called her Knit Zalas, your speedy Knit Zalas. If you are a speedy Knit Zalas, you can enter all those sweaters in for prizes at the end. And so I'll be accumulating prizes along the way, and then I'll show them to you when I have them. I actually ordered something that hasn't arrived yet. So anyway, there you go. So that is Cal News. I'm excited. I'm really excited. Anyway, so from here on in, I've got 2 more things I want to talk to you about, and we're at 45 minutes, so we're going to be close to an hour. I got a couple of questions and I just wanted to answer them, and then I'll show you a couple of little things in acquisitions, and then it'll be the end of the podcast today. So I actually had 3 questions. Well, one was more of a suggestion than a question, but I thought I'd address it anyway. Carrie asked if I would ever knit on the podcast. I suspect that Carrie watches the Two Tangled Skeins, and whenever I have podcasted with the Two Tangled Skeins, we're always sitting there knitting. But I don't knit on this podcast. And I think that's just because being on my own, I need my complete headspace to be able to actually, speak coherently or semi-coherently anyway, and keep my thoughts going and not just kind of wander off into space. When there are 2 or 3 of you podcasting together, one person is speaking and the other one or the other 2 actually could be knitting at that time, and then participating. And I found when I was on the Two Tangled Skeins that when it was my turn to talk or when I had something to say, I just naturally stopped knitting. Because it's one thing to be part of a group and chatting, but then when you have to focus and think about what you're saying, it's even if you're doing something mindless, it was just like it just took that little bit of attention. So I don't think that I'll be knitting on here, but thank you for the suggestion. Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe if I get comfortable enough podcasting, I could do it, but I think for now it would be a little bit, it would really chop things up a little bit. Another question that I had was from Donna, and Donna asked, how do you store and keep track of your yarn and patterns? Now, I showed you my needle keeping system last time, which was a little mayhem-like. I would like to tell you that my pattern and my yarn storage is better. And I can say that for my yarn storage, it's definitely better. When it comes to my yarn, as I told you, I have a closet. I don't have a full yarn room. But it's mostly in bins, in Ziploc bags, in bins. I do have to be careful about moths. I have had moths, never a very serious problem, but I have had issues. And so I have learned to keep my yarn in Ziploc bags. And we don't have air conditioning, so the back door will often be open, and I've had woolly things on this floor that have been sort of like stuck in a corner, end up with holes in them. So I have to be a little bit careful. And the yarn closet is in my daughter's room. It's a complicated story, but she's actually in the master bedroom. My 2 kids used to be in the master bedroom. My son's moved out. We just decided we'd just keep her in there. We're in the sort of middle room. And mostly it was because we wanted to be in the back of the house and not in the front. So anyway, my yarn is in the second closet in that room, in my daughter's room. And one day I walked into the room and I saw a moth flying, and I just about lost it. And I was able to catch it and kill it. And then the next time I walked in, or another time, I don't know if it was next, I opened the closet and there was a moth flying in there, and I just about lost it. And so I thought, well, most things are in Ziploc bags, so what in the world is going on here? And I let it be, so I just thought, I'm going to wait and see if I see one more moth, and I never saw another moth. And then I thought, and I was still thinking, where could this be? And I had a felted bag in there that I made a long time ago, and I used it to death. The handle eventually gave up. And I'm completely going off in another direction, but just bear with me. So anyway, it turned out that I actually saw the little, what do you call them? Where the moths hatch from. They were in that bag. So I actually just took that bag, took the contents of the bag, and put it in the garbage outside, and I haven't had a problem yet since then. So my yarn is all in bins. I store it in bins for fingering, bins for DK, bins for worsted, bins for bulky or chunky, and overspill. I have to say that the bin where my fingering weight yarn is completely full. I find we end up with more fingering weight yarn, at least I have, than other weights. There's a big basket next to that where I keep things, and that's about as organized as it gets. All my yarn, I would say 95% of my yarn is on Ravelry. With or without pictures, but number of skeins and so forth. So if I'm looking for a project, or if I'm looking for, a weight of yarn, I can go through the weights. And that's pretty much it. I also carry around a notebook where I keep track of my sweater quantities by weight, because I have quite a few of them. I have 28 sweater quantities currently. That means that I have quantities for 28 sweaters. And so I have them in a notebook, and I'm very religious about keeping track in my notebook. They get scratched out when they're used, new ones get added in, and I keep track. And I don't want to go higher than 28. I'd like to be more in the 15 range, but what can I tell you? I have a weakness for sweater quantities. And I keep that notebook in my purse all the time. I write other things in there, and I'm talking about a physical notebook, not an iPad or anything. And sometimes when I'm on the bus, I, go through them and see, okay, what do I want to work with next, and so forth. I also keep track of my sock yarns and my shawl quantities in there. And I also keep lists of patterns that I'm kind of intrigued by. But when it comes to patterns, my favorites on Ravelry, I tend to tag my favorites, and that's how I keep track of things. So I put tags like top or cardigan, DK, and then if there's a yarn that I really think that would work with, I'll put that there. So last time I showed you the concept yarn that I got by Katya, and so I have a tag now for concept. So I think I have 3 sweaters tagged with concept. Or WM for wool mice or whatever. So and if I think that if it's a DK sweater, but I actually think it could also work with sport weight, I'll put, cardigan, DK, sport, wool mice or whatever, or white, because I know that my DK yarn, I have a white quantity, or black or something like that. And so when I realize that I want to use that white yarn and I haven't completely decided what I want to do, I can do a search through my favorites on Ravelry and pare it down. So in fact, right now I have a new tag called 2017 because I'm trying to decide what to do with my DK. It's a natural white color by Stylecraft. And so I pared down the pages and pages that I had for DK and white down to about 13 quantities, and I'm making a decision on that. And so you'll probably be hearing about that fairly soon. So that's how I store them. I have some books, of course, and I also have a lot of printed patterns. And that's really just a pile, I gotta be honest. And then I go through the pile. And then of course I have the library of purchased patterns on Ravelry. So that's kind of how I do it. Hopefully, I don't know if that's of any use, but yeah, I do love my notebooks, and I do have a fountain pen always. I actually lost a notebook recently and I was devastated. I lost my notebook and my fountain pen, which I had had for 10 years. I was more upset about the notebook because I put all my knitting stuff in there, but I put inspirational quotes, I put recipes I want to try, I put, travel plans, gift ideas for my kids for Christmas. I mean, movies that I've seen, books that I want to read, everything goes in that book. So I was really, really upset when I lost that book, and I was just completely baffled that I had actually misplaced it and have never been able to find it. So it's gone. So that was the first question. The other question was if I have tried the Lykke DPNs. And am I a DPN user? I am not a DPN user. I have been a DPN user, but I stopped using DPNs when I realized that there was many things you could do with circulars, that it didn't always have to be. When I learned how to magic loop, I pretty much gave up DPNs. And the main reason for that is casting on with DPNs can be a bit of a challenge, but I just can't seem to knit with DPNs without getting a ladder. And I just don't want to focus so much on not getting a ladder. I just want to knit. So I have my stash of DPNs, which are in a bit of a pouch, and they're just all in there. And I use them occasionally, but I'm not a DPN user. So therefore, I have not used the Lucca needles, the Lucca DPNs. Espace Tricot, which is a podcast with the two owners of the Espace Tricot wool shop in Montreal, which I've never been to, but hope to go at one point. They podcasted this week, episode number 11, and they talked about the Lucca DPNs and had nothing but wonderful things to say about them. And these needles, they've got the DPNs have this black tab on there, which actually gives the size of the needle, and it's in the middle of the needle, and they said it's super smooth. So they spoke very highly of the Lucca DPNs. So that's all I can tell you about that. I'm not a DPN girl. I'm a Magic Loop girl. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for your question. I don't know what your name is because you didn't have it on your Ravelry page, but thanks to all three of you for your questions. So a tiny bit of acquisitions, not a whole lot. I have been wanting to make the Starting Point shawl by Jochi Locatelli. Honestly, I don't think I've seen an ugly version of this shawl. Like, this is one of those patterns that it doesn't seem to matter what color combination people use. It just looks fabulous. I've really been quite impressed by that. I'm not a mystery knit along. Do not like that. But as soon as I was starting to see projects, I just thought, those are so fabulous. So I started accumulating or putting together yarns that I have in my stash. I put together this peach, and I wanted to avoid purple because if you know me, I got a lot of purple shawls and I want to try and get away from that. So I wanted to put something together, and these were actually colors that I was originally going to do in my lumpy space, which will be an upcoming shawl as well. But then I changed the lumpy space to something more kind of red and brownish. So I had these 4 colors, but I needed a 5th. So my acquisitions are about trying to complete this shawl. So one acquisition I bought that I thought might work as the 5th color, because these are all fairly solid. So I needed something that was going to be a bit more speckled. And it's the Skein by the Fawn and the Fox in her Otter base, which is a superwash merino nylon in the Spumoni colorway, and it's got greens and pinks. So when I first got that, I thought that was pretty good. But at the same time, I ordered yarn from Orange Yarns. And when it arrived, I realized, oh no, this is the winner. It is this, things seem a bit dark here today, but it is this beautiful, I mean, just stunning speckled base. This is her 100% superwash merino twist sock base, it's called. There's no nylon in it though. And it's the Charm colorway. And when I put this with these other 4 colors, I was like, I think this is the winner. I think. Then I started having second thoughts about the green. And I started wondering if maybe this kind of golden one might be the one. And this is just a hand dyed by me. So anyway, I really like that. Very earthy. That's what these acquisitions were for. So these 2 were the ones that I was trying to complete the shawl with. This is going to probably become socks instead. This is definitely going to into the shawl. And I ended up buying another one that was kind of more of an orange skein as well. These were very reasonably priced compared to, I find sometimes hand-dyed socks yarn, I mean, we're paying premium price for beautiful things, right? I found these to be actually quite reasonably priced. So we'll see how they are. And these ones go really well together as well. Beautiful, beautiful yarns. And this color is Sunset, and this is kind of orangey color as well. And that's it for my acquisitions. I think that's it for today. I think I've said everything I need to say. So I hope this podcast has found you well, and I hope that I'll be able to podcast again before Rhinebeck. As I said, our anniversary is coming up, and the next 3 weekends are actually quite busy. We've got a fair in a town called Carp coming up next week that we want to go to, and then it's our anniversary, and then we're hoping to go to Montreal to see an exhibit at the Musée des Beaux-Arts about the era of the Beatles and with the kids. And so I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to podcast next, but I do hope that it's going to be before Rhinebeck, and I do hope that I've got some nice things to show you. So I hope that September is treating you well, and don't forget the giveaway and making a comment down below in YouTube, and do think about the CAL and if you want to join. If you want to join in the CAL, you should go over and become a member of the Ravelry group Little Big Knits, because that's where we'll be doing all of that stuff. And that's it for today, friends. I hope that you have a good rest of September. Happy crafting to you, and we'll talk again when we talk. Take care. Bye-bye.